Most of Santuario de San Antonio was filled with light on Hallows Eve. Candles burned bright all around the church. The rooms of the parish center were filled with warm light and warm faces. Only the crypt remained dark. The bones behind every wall were still and silent. It was a dark place, and whatever walked in the crypt walked alone, just like you.
I'm sorry if that was too much.
Don't worry, you're fine. If anything, that was honestly really sweet, what you said about your uncle.
Yeah, I find it really nice that you still talk to him. And as a first horror story, I'm kinda second guessing about doing a share group here.
You do got lots of guts, though, Claudia. If I were you, I think my uncle would understand if I never came back here.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, David, are you good?
Huh? Why?
Parang you went pale, ha? Or is that just the papaya soap you've been using so much of?
Psh! Joke's on you. My mom says it's bagay for my skin type.
Hey, how about we move on to whoever's next?
Yeah, I'll pass first. Still thinking of a good one.
Aw, it's okay, Big D. We'll give your little brain some time. But same, I'll pass.
I'm not yet ready.
Oh. Alright, I guess I can go next.
Ooh, alright, go Noah. I bet it's when you met me.
Yeah, sure. It's a simple story, but it's one I'm sure you haven't heard before. I personally don't really enjoy communals. I think it's great that some people can pray that way, but I like being in the Adoration Chapel. It's quiet and I usually get the place to myself. I usually go there with Kiki, but as time went on, I started going alone. After I would pray at the chapel, whoever I was with, or if it was just me, would go to socials and follow, and things would be great. This meant I usually parked in the back of the church, behind the Adoration Chapel. It didn't really bother me, but something really strange would start to happen when I came out of there late at night. The back of the Adoration Chapel is the creepiest part of the church, if you ask me. Even creepier than this crypt right now. It's not so much that it looks haunted like the garden, or there's lots of graves like here in the crypt. It just feels hollow. It feels like something should be there, like cars or people, but nothing is. That whatever should be there at that moment isn't. It always felt like walking through there was trespassing. That I was in a place that I really wasn't meant to be in. I wasn't always out of the chapel super late, but sometimes my friends would ask me to stay for communals, and I would stay. This usually meant that after communals, I would take a trip to the chapel, and I would come out to an empty church. I mean, sure, there might have been a car or two left, or maybe a guard was still up by the front, but none of them ever went to the back area, where I liked to park. At first, the darkness and the silence of the place made me kinda nervous, but I started finding it peaceful. I got to pray as long as I wanted, and I would walk back to my car or drive to McFort or go home whenever I wanted. I liked this feeling so much that I started to do this every meeting, whether someone would ask me to stay for communals or not. It became a routine, and it truly was the best of both worlds for me. But one night I started hearing things. It was a meeting that went on pretty late. The talk was really good, and the share groups took too long, and everyone wanted to pray in communals, so I'm sure you've all been to a meeting like that. Someone asked me to stay for communals, and I did. After that, I went to pray in the chapel, and Before I knew it, it was 1 in the morning. I hustled my way to the car because I didn't want to miss out on socials, and it was already pretty late. I got to the back parking lot entrance and I started hearing things. I couldn't really make out where it was coming from or if it was really anything. But it sounded far. It sounded rough, like scratching. Or that feeling when you hear something underwater. Or even maybe hearing someone or something through a wall or from another room. I know those aren't really the same thing, but I don't really know how else to describe it. I wasn't sure if it was just the exhaustion getting to me or whatever, so I brushed it aside and got into my car. When I got inside, I could still hear something. I figured that some people were in the weird shed that's back there, or maybe some priests were praying louder than normal. Maybe I was just imagining it. I was sitting in my seat for a while trying to figure it out, but my stomach rumbled. I couldn't figure it out, and I was too hungry to care at that moment. I just started the car and drove to McFort like I usually did, and eventually the noises faded away. That was the first time. The second time this happened, it was during weekend prep. I was one of the recon heads at the time, and my fellow heads and I stayed a bit late to clean up and to plan a bit more. Like everything in Antioch, it went on a little later than expected. As usual, I ended my night by going to the chapel to pray. It was 2 a.m. this time when I finished. As I stepped out of the chapel to walk to my car, the air felt different. It was a summer night, but the air was cold. I could feel the hairs over my arms stand up. Stepping out into that night felt wrong. I thought about going back inside, but it was already too late for me to be hanging around there. I started walking to my car, and it was about halfway when they came back. When the noises came back. They were louder this time. The first night I was able to brush it off. I could pretend like it wasn't there. This time, they were too loud for me to pretend. It didn't help that I finally figured out what the sound was. It was whispering. You know how they say there's 2 responses a person has when they're put in danger? Fight or flight? Well, they never mentioned the third one, which is freeze. Some people don't know how to deal with danger, so they just stop functioning. They freeze. And I could feel the blood in my veins turn into ice. I was frozen in place, held to the ground by fear. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I felt goosebumps all over my body. This wasn't some noise I was imagining or hearing off in the distance. This was meant for me, and it felt dangerous. Every signal in my brain was screaming that I was in danger, and yet the only thing I could focus on was the sound, the whispering. It sounded like it did that first night, muffled or far away, only this time it was louder, much louder. I would hear the voice coming from my right, and when I looked it was gone. Then it happened on my left, and then it was behind me. I could feel it get closer, like it was right behind me. I could almost feel it breathing down my neck. I was paralyzed. I was scared just to move. I felt like a mouse that was being hunted by a cat. Any sudden move might start a chase that I can't win. I stood there for what felt like an hour, but something changed. I started hearing more. There was more whispering. I could hear them clear as day, and it sounded like they came from right in front of me. I couldn't make out a lot, but I could understand 2 words. Behind you, it said. When I was able to put 2 and 2 together, I just stopped thinking and ran. I booked it to my car, got in, and drove away as fast as I could. I don't remember driving home. I just remember sitting in front of my house, making sure I couldn't hear anything. It was about an hour until I was convinced that I was alone. My daze was broken by the sound of my ringtone. It was my mom checking to see if everything was okay. I wasn't sure what I was gonna tell her. At that moment, I guess I was safe, but I didn't feel okay. I felt like I escaped. Whatever was stalking me back there took its time, and that was the only reason I was able to get out. If I didn't hear those 2 words, I have a feeling that it would have gone very differently that night. I hope I don't have to explain how after that night I stopped going back there for a while. I stayed in communals after meetings. I didn't believe that it was anything else in the church, but I didn't really feel like pushing it by going back there. I didn't go back to the Adoration Chapel, and I even started coming to church earlier to find parking in safer places. That experience was all the excuse that I needed to never go back there. Say what you will, but feeling like a mouse with a hungry cat nearby was enough to keep me away. But the thing is, I didn't stay away. As time went on, I forgot more and more about what happened that night. Weeks turned into months, and eventually a year passed since that night. I didn't remember the fear. In fact, I started thinking that maybe I was imagining that incident. I still didn't go back there, but I was smart enough to avoid it. But there was one night I forgot. Now, you can call me an idiot for going back there again, and yeah, that's true. But I had a long day. My mind was on a lot of different things that night, and the fear that kept me away for so long slipped into the back of my mind. I came from an org event, and I was in school for most of the day. I was late for the meeting. A friend was giving the talk, and I didn't want to miss it. The Friday night traffic kept me from getting to the meeting at my usual time, and when I got there, the parking lots were full. Except that one in the back. I went into the meeting and left my car in the one spot I promised myself I wouldn't. The meeting was another one of those late ones. I only wanted to do one thing after all that. There was only one place I wanted to go. The chapel. I was pretty tired and I didn't feel like going to socials that night, so I let myself take my time. By the time I was done, it was 2 in the morning, I think. I decided that it was probably a good time to head home and get some rest. I walked back to my car and was just about to pass out right there in that parking lot. For the first time in a long time, that place back there felt peaceful again. I was really beginning to think that maybe it was just my imagination. I was about halfway to my car before I was proven wrong. It didn't come all at once. First, I noticed the air had gone cold. Then the night became quiet. I swear you could hear a pin drop. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up and goosebumps rippled across my body. I could feel my heart pounding through my ears. I shut my eyes and prayed that this was just me imagining things again, that it was just another bad dream. That was when the whispering came back. It was back, and it was louder than ever before. There wasn't any playing around this time. I didn't hear it from somewhere to my left or right. It was everywhere, and it was deafening. I didn't even bother to try and make out what it was saying this time. I bolted straight for my car. I got in, shut the doors, and dropped my keys like an idiot. When I bent down to try and grab them, something made me freeze. I was paralyzed, bent down with an arm outstretched to reach for the keys next to my foot. I knew where the whispering was coming from this time. It was inside the car. It was all around me now. I tried to filter it out, but it felt like the whispering was inside my head. I was too scared to try and make out what the words were. I didn't want to know. I thought about getting out, but I felt something on the back of my neck. Breathing. Short, shallow breathing. And it was coming from the back seat of my car. Right behind me. I could feel its breath on my neck as I sat in my seat there. It was warm, but I shivered anyway. I don't know how long I was sitting there, but the longer it went on, the faster it got. It was getting excited. I shut my eyes, praying and hoping that I was gonna wake up from a nightmare and my day would start over again. It didn't. I was stuck in my own car, blindly reaching for keys while something was breathing down my neck. Slowly, I found them and straightened back up. I could feel tears rolling down my cheeks, but I couldn't hear myself crying over the whispering. It was waiting for something, but I didn't want to know what. I slowly raised my keys to the ignition and twisted it. The car's engine hummed to life, and I felt an icy grip on my shoulder. It squeezed me so tight that I think I screamed a bit. Its hand was cold, freezing almost. I slowly opened my eyes, hoping that I was somewhere else. Instead, I saw the thing in the back seat through my rearview mirror. I couldn't make out much, but I could see enough. It looked like a girl, but she had long, dark, and shaggy hair covering her eyes and mouth. She had pale skin, and she was right next to my face, close enough to whisper. She turned her head to me, and I finally made out what she had been saying. He's behind you. With her other hand, she grabbed the rearview mirror and turned it so that I could see the back windshield of my car. She was right. He was on the other side of my windshield, looking inside my car, at us. The car's engine roared as I hit the gas pedal. I shot out of there and haven't been back since. I keep a promise to myself now. Never go back there and never forget. I don't think I'm gonna be given a second chance if I get stuck there again. I don't need to be given a second chance. I still hear the whispering sometimes, but I'm not as afraid anymore. That whispering kept me alive. I don't know who that girl is, or I guess who she was. I'm not sure if I really need to. I don't know why she chose to help me, but I'm just grateful that she did. No, I don't really need to know what happened that night. I don't think I want to know. I don't want to know who she is, who she was, whatever. And I certainly don't want to know why the man behind my car had no hands and way too many eyes.
David, didn't you park in the back?
Bruh, do you really expect me to believe in some parking lot ghost? No offense though, Noah. Your story was a sight.
But what if she's the same as the one in the crypt?
I hope not.
Yeah, let's not jump on that idea.
That would be interesting, though. I mean, these scary stories are pretty fun. But, Noah, I just wanted to say
There we go.
that was honestly really disturbing.
Oh,
I'm sorry you had to go through all of that. Like, legit, all of that happened to you? I'd probably cry if I was in your place.
really?
Really. I'm really glad you're okay.
Same, man. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, but you're really brave, Noah.
Yeah, actually. You should give yourself some more credit.
Wow, that actually means a lot. So, is this the part where we hug or something?
All right, don't push it. So, who wants to go next?